Hi, I am Caroline Holt, and I'm going to do some sales fundamentals on first sales conversations. So, for my business, Toying with This Idea, I specialize in sales effectiveness. So, specifically, that's talent, tools, training, talk tracks, all the things that would either help your commercial teams, whether they're on the first kind of new logo sales side or the ongoing upskilling and development of your growth team. So, the folks who are responsible for expansion and renewal. Most people hate salespeople because they are pitching you. So the famous Glenn Ross, always be closing, that is totally antithetical to the way I teach. I focus on always be curious. Your prospects and customers are going to love to talk about themselves, but only if you give them a chance. So we're going to explore a little bit about how to do that. First, if those of you who are at LR1, this is going to be a little bit of a recap for you. If you weren't there, this will give you a little bit of context. But the most important thing you can do is align buyer and seller journeys for better outcomes. So if you think back to jobs to be done, your customers don't typically need a half-inch drill bit. They're coming into that hardware store because they need to drill a half an inch hole. And so what you want to think about is where that buyer is in their journey, because if you don't quote unquote qualify them, you may not know how far you are from having an opportunity or getting that opportunity to close. So if you want to think about, does this customer or prospect have pain that our solution specifically can solve? Can they solve them today, or are they lacking resources needed to solve those effectively? Do they have intent to change within ideally 6 months, but as many as 12 months, maybe even 18 months if you've got a really long sales cycle? And then access to money. They've got either the ability to directly influence or they themselves have budget to do things. I talked about the three sales balls that, from my perspective, drive every good sales opportunity from start to close, whether that's new logo or expansion and renewal. So need, what's the funded mandate? What are the implications of getting that right or wrong? The insufficient resources, so why can't they do this on their own? And the timeline for making some sort of impact. Value is all about the prospect or customer's ability to articulate that the quantitative or qualitative ROI is significantly greater than the cost. And then the decision process is all about understanding your competition, the evaluation process, the funding, and then the signature. So that takes you through the buyer's journey and some of the life cycle. Now, keep in mind that an inbound opportunity, they are already either window shopping or they're actively buying and they're looking for velocity or exploration of some of that. When we're going outbound, though, we are interrupting their day. So we're going to expect that there are far fewer of those outbound calls that immediately turn into opportunity. We need to do more nurture there. We need to really help them understand the cost of the problem to get them into that active buying cycle. So let's talk about what those customer prospect facing activities are in that first conversation. So first of all, be sure to do your research. Most prospects and customers think we're ill prepared. Think about what's going on in their business, what's hard about that, and then who within that business cares about that. That's going to help you form your hypothesis for why they should talk to us, why they might need us, and why they should ultimately buy from us. But any good hypothesis needs to be tested real time. Make sure you think about who you're talking to. Are they above or below the power line? If you get somebody super senior, C-suite, very oriented towards vision, strategy, they're going to care about a lot about that, but they're probably going to want some of those folks below the power line to be involved. Now, people below the power line tend to be easier to schedule with, more likely to talk to you, but they're going to be much more thinking about how this actually impacts their process or day-to-day activities. Just keep in mind that both above and below the power line can stall or kill your deal. Make sure that you've got the right meeting agenda out there so that you've got the right people showing up and clarity on what's designed to happen in the call. Let's talk about what's actually happening in that live or virtual conversation. So first and foremost, start by being memorable. Memorable is not sports and weather unless you have something really amazing going on in either of those two places. But storytelling, stuff about them specifically, are very memorable. Start with your introduction, who you are, your role. Make sure to thank them for their time. And if you're bringing somebody along with you, introduce your colleague. Then use what I call the etch opening. So this is a combination of excitement, time check, confirmation of the agenda, and then hidden objections or highlights. So let's hit on what those are. So excitement, there's always a reason to be excited to talk to somebody. So, hey, I was excited to talk to you today because maybe they were just in the news about something. Maybe there's something cool that you're up to. Maybe it's been a while since you've connected. But you want to ask something like, but why did you take my call today, right? That helps you get a sense of what's on their agenda. Time check is, how much time do we have together? And then do you have a hard stop at half past or whatever the time is? The C for confirm is goals, roles, and outcomes. So the goal of our conversation today is to explore a little bit more about why you reached out to us, and what you're looking for in terms of a demo. I'd love to understand from you, so that I can show you this, that, and the other thing. And by the end of our conversation, you're going to have pretty good clarity on this or that. And typically the next step might be this or that. Anything else you were hoping to cover today? So you can either stop at the ET and C, or you can add the H, which is my personal favorite, particularly if it's a first conversation, because it gets to hidden objections or highlights. So how much do you know about us, or any constructive criticism based on what you know can be great. Whatever they tell you, that's your opportunity to educate or re-educate them with your own version of the elevator pitch. So the elevator pitch for most companies starts with you as the company. I would actually start with them, which is problems that exist in the market that caused us to be who we are. So we noticed this across organizations, across industries. We were seeing this. So who we are, what we do, and why that's impactful. You think about the diamond, right? Be color, cut, clarity, carrots, all of those things can help you have a really strong elevator pitch. Then I want you to think about whatever you're teaching them, whatever you're discovering from them or teaching them across that conversation, ask as many insight gaining questions as you can. So temperature taking questions are things like, hey, this is cool, right? Or your team's probably going to get really excited about this, aren't they? Those are closed questions. I want you to think about insight gaining questions. If you, for example, find out earlier that they really struggle with reporting on something, use that as an opportunity to ask an insight gaining question like, so I just showed you some of how our reporting tool works. Can you tell me a little bit about how that compares to what you're seeing today, right? So something that really gets you into the brain of the person you're talking with. Or, hey, tell me a little bit about how this might change your ability to do X or Y. And then be sure to actively listen to what they're telling you. So you can show active listening through eyes, ears, mouth, body language, all that good stuff. So use that. Say, hey, it really sounds like you're thinking about this or that. Let me go ahead and recap that for you. I want to make sure I understand that correctly. Or, hey, interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about this thing that you mentioned earlier? So then once you do that, it'll probably give them the opportunity to tell you, yeah, you got most of that right, but here's something that you missed. Or maybe I didn't explain that well. Let me give you the nuance there that I was talking about. And then last but not least, my next step formula. First of all, make sure to dedicate at least 20%, well, at least 10%, I would say about 20% of the call to your next steps. So the thing that most salespeople or people generally do is if you've got 30 minutes together, at 30 minutes, you're starting to think about next steps. Start at 25 minutes or ideally even 20 minutes into a 30-minute call. You want to start with a recap of the conversation. You want to explore the next steps. So ask questions. If they've had questions, right, use that as a reason for a next conversation. You want to avoid homework. And homework is anything that you might send as an attachment or ask them to do. So think about, exploring things like who besides you are going to be evaluating some of the solution. What's that conversation going to look like? What are they going to like about it? What aren't they going to like? Okay, how about based on that, why don't we get a call with them together? I could teach you a little bit about this or that, and make sure that they can understand that, right? So then you only want to give them up to one piece of homework. The one piece of homework might be getting the colleague to show up for the meeting, or could be that you're sending a recap with the case study that you shared in the call for them to reference. So I like to think about attachments as something you've already shared and shown, not something that they have to do as homework. And then most importantly, set a date and time with a goal for that next step, and make sure to send that invite right afterwards with the right folks on it. So hopefully that is a solid foundation in how to lead that first sales conversation. If you want more on discovery or objection handling or anything, I'm always happy to give at least a half an hour, if not an hour, to a Darden student.